Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm Jim Milliken, Chair of the Concord Historical Society. And welcome once again to our second Thursday program. At 7 o'clock, the second Thursday of every month, we look forward to seeing you folks here. And let me see, some of the things I need to tell you ahead of time is once again, we have our books on sale. If you haven't seen our Cross Currents of Change, it's the history of the 20th century. You really ought to take a look at it. And there's like two versions over there. One is a hardcover, that one's $40. And the one that's a paper cover is $20. And then, if you decide you'd like to buy one of those, we're going to give you one of the ones that Liz Hengen did. Liz did a wonderful book with Gary Sampson about downtown buildings. And we'll also share that with you. So there's one other thing over there that, well, there's a couple of other things over there, but one of them that people say, what is this here for? And I think exactly, Justin and...
Justice and McNessy.
What in the world would that be about? Anybody know?
Well, I do, but that's cheap.
The Loch Ness Monster. Now, why in the world would we have one of those?
Bob Rhines.
Bob Rhines.
Wait a minute, I heard three answers.
There's a fellow up at the law school that likes them.
Yeah.
Well, Bob Rhines, who started the law school, in fact, did the research. And the Concord Historical Society has most of the records of that research, and someday we'll probably be doing a presentation on the Loch Ness Monster. A lot of people say, are you crazy? You know, we haven't seen Champy in Lake Champlain, but Bob really got up some good information, and he did a lot of electronic work and sonar stuff, and he was a good guy. He passed away several years ago. Question?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to comment that I worked for Bob Rhines for a while, and much of his money came from developing and enhancing side-scanning sonar, which was critical in World War II for finding U-boats and so forth. But as he confessed over coffee, he followed that passion to look for the Loch Ness Monster.
Now, did you just say you worked with him?
I did.
I found someone to go through this stuff and create a presentation.
No, give her name. Don't let her.
Oh, I know who she is, trust me.
Is she your wife?
Yes, she is.
Oh, I get you now.
Now you've done it.
I'll keep us moving. But thank you. I mean, people don't believe it sometimes. But once again, Concord had another very good person in the community who did worldwide stuff. And that's why we're such a special place. But I'm a little prejudiced because I grew up here. But anyways, also there's a little jar around the corner and it says donations on it. There's always one of those. We love donations. And already I've sent two people downstairs to the bathroom, and the bathroom's right there outside that door. So there's not much more that I need to tell you about, except Metamorphosis breathed new life into the first Congregational church. And that's John Shorelian and John Jordan. Now, are you going to give us a little bit of history of the building?
We will, thanks to Ken Calick, who
Ken is here also.
will correct everything.
Historian from
We get wrong.
First Church. Then I won't get into it. I'm pretty familiar with the First Church, and truly it was the first church. And it's a very, very special property. And we want to make sure it's treated with a great deal of respect. And these are three guys who have that kind of respect for the property that they're dealing with. So I'll say no more. Please, John, would you like to start?
I will. Thank you, Jim, and thanks, Jen, for inviting us.
You're very welcome.
Summoning us. I was thinking, this is to do a presentation about a project as we've just started is hopefully we're not jinxing anything, but we're happy to come back and show you in a year, hopefully, what it looks like. John, we're being recorded, so we can't swear. That's number one. Number two, I do want to really thank Ken Calick, who's a member of First Congregational Church who's been a tremendous resource. I should email to everybody this little summary of history of First Congregational Church and how it ties into the history of Concord and really pre-Concord. It's a gem, and Ken can correct all my errors at the end. There's a lot of familiar faces here. Please, hopefully we say some things that you don't agree with. And you should, I don't know what the protocols are. Interrupt me. It's not going to hurt my feelings. Ask any questions. We'll certainly talk a lot about First Congregational Church and its adaptive reuse. Thanks to Jen for the title. I did add through adaptive reuse, but I think you may have suggested that too. I guess I'd like to sort of just spend a little bit of time at the beginning to kind of set it in the context of how do we approach older buildings in general. Every community sort of struggles with that. There's, do we preserve them intact? Do we demolish them? Do we do something in between? There's obviously no single answer to that, but they're sort of in the public domain in a sense. I mean, I think there's kind of this, it's strange. We live in New Hampshire, live free or die. I always joke, in Concord, if you owned the State House and you wanted to tear it down, you could. There's just, there is a demolition review process, but, it's completely advisory. I wonder if that's the best system. I mean, I feel like there's all these buildings, there's so much history in them, and people care so much about them that certainly the developer should get maybe the largest vote, but maybe not the only vote. So we begin. I guess you're supposed to start these presentations with a joke, but that's a little dangerous these days. So does that 39 years, does that mean anything to anybody?
It's your age.
I wish. I'll give you a hint. If you were a tax lawyer, you'd know. Will, you should know. Come on. So the Internal Revenue Code basically deems a building to last 39 years. You are allowed to depreciate 1/39th of the value of a building every year. So to simplify the math, if you bought a building for $39 million, you can depreciate $1 million, take a deduction of $1 million each year for 39 years. And then at the end of that 39 years, it is, in the IRS's eyes, worth zero. I remember learning that in law school and thinking, that is just the dumbest thing in the world. Buildings last forever, but they don't last forever, right? They don't last forever without significant investment. I mean, some buildings do truly sort of wither away and collapse. Others require substantial investments to continue to live, be the building and serve the purpose they were built for. And then a bunch of others, the ones that we're probably the most interested in, something happens. The sands shift and they need a new life, and that is not inexpensive. So obviously this doesn't work in all cases, but I think the concept of thinking of a building as it doesn't just last forever without investment is the right concept. We're going to talk a lot more about adaptive reuse tonight, but that Strawberry Bank, I get it. In this realm of sort of old buildings, sometimes they're to be preserved exactly, and the fenestration is supposed to stay exactly the same. Everything has to stay the same. I'm glad that there are buildings that, I'm glad there are people who care about that, and that there are buildings that are preserved in that level. I'm a lot more interested in this realm of sort of taking buildings and trying to energize them, turn the page, figure out what the heck are you going to do with them. But it's not always clear, and I think on a lot of, hopefully, there's disagreement when projects come up. Some people think we ought to be more on the left side, some people think we should be on the right side, and other people say it's okay to tear them down. Obviously, we are burdened and blessed by this. It forms so much of how we think about buildings, old buildings in Concord. It's this sort of never again. Even though, when was that, 60s? I mean,
1959 and 60.
So everything runs through that consciousness. I always joke, we sort of, anything with a brick and a cobweb, we kind of want to preserve in Concord. And that has led to some, this community sort of being generous and marshaling its energies to do some remarkable things. like save the gas holder. But there's complicated questions. Steve Dupree and I tore down what was one of the last manufacturing buildings in downtown Concord, and now there's this. Is that a step forward or not? I think it is, but I hope that there are people that disagree with that. I do. Employment security to the Flatley building. Again, I hope there are people, I'm on the right side, but I hope that there's people on both sides. Steve is desperate, if you have a piece of land, and Steve will move that building for you, right? But
That should be for the homeless, if nothing else.
find a lot, he'll move it, and it'll be that. Again, I hope we don't all agree that it's 100% one way or the other. Mark's remarkable building to re-energize Phoenix Hall. I mean, they're all nuanced. So what do I think? I think that is kind of in the public trust. I really do. It's owned downtown Concord. I think individuals own pieces of it, but I think it comes with a responsibility. I mean, again, I think the owner has an outsized vote, but I think that there is a public investment in the downtown, and I think it's different, and I think it requires more thinking through things more. What else do I think? I think that if I had to editorialize, I hope that when we have these historical discussions, we don't just think about the brick and granite buildings. We are willing to think about buildings that we will recognize might be important in time. I mean, that was on the cover, the employment security building on the cover of New Hampshire Architect. I don't think that exists anymore, right, Chris?
No.
It was considered, whether you like it or not, it is important in some form. It's a stepping stone. And you know what that is, Chris?
That building?
Yeah,
I do not.
it's in San Francisco. It is the one-time home of,
Yeah.
AIA headquarters. The first glass curtain wall building in the United States. Right, John?
I think so. Could be.
Think any skyscraper that you know and love was built with that technology. You got to start somewhere. You don't have to like, the seminal one. I think sometimes these transitional build, and again, I'm not saying that I love it and we should have saved it, but I guess if I had put my thumb on the scale for one thing is think about stuff that's not ancient as possibly being important when we wrestle with these things. What do I really think? I think I don't like any of those. Not because they're ugly, because they're low quality. They aren't built to their, and I love all of these. Again, they're a mix of styles, but I love, they are high quality buildings. It's not a coincidence that every single one of them has an old and new components. Eagle Hotel, flanked by this 1980s thing, and then the Sheridan building that Mark put up. This is,
It's at the corner of
Yep.
School Street and Main.
right, and that's the city's new tower going up to the garages. I love it. I think it's a great, the now legislative office building with Dick Dudley's garage addition, which I think is lovely. I may be the only one. I mean, the entrance to the Cap Center, and didn't know Chris was coming, but it's a little out of focus, but the old Merrimack County Superior Court, a Dick Dudley addition, and then I think this is one of the most beautiful buildings in Concord. This, this curved, Chris designed it, this curved building that is completely different in style, but it's very similar in materials and colors. And it just is stunning to me. I hope we get more of those. So that actually is supposed to be in this slide. So that's John Jordan on the drumming on the Bank of New Hampshire stage. The point of that is to say, do what you love. And we both love old buildings and trying to figure out what the heck to do with them. That's my dad as a chemical engineer and then starving us to death as a potter, moving to New Hampshire. So it's in my genes too. I got into this, I was a lawyer at Orton Reno, and then my little adaptive reuses, if you will, of some West End buildings And then, but my track record isn't perfect, you know. That's Rollins Court. I get all kinds of, you know, attaboys for that, but it came at the price of losing St. Peter's Church. At the time, I think my view was kind of like the Employment Security Building. It's ugly, it's 1950s. Like, I'm not sure I was completely right about that one. Now, in defense, the bishop had already come to his own conclusion, which is the Catholic churches will be torn down before being transferred to heathen hands. So it was coming down anyway. That was, I thought, a once-in-a-lifetime project. I'm sorry to block your view, Jim. Just a spectacular building. I mean, we just had to essentially stay out of the way of that thing and help it to turn the page. It won all kinds of awards, which was honestly pretty simple because you start with that and it's hard to screw it up. But these things, as you turn the page to a new chapter, it's painful. That's the cross coming off the church. And well, certain elements are saved, a lot is lost. But with a lot of investment, there is a new chapter. I'm always amazed how many people still think it's a church, which I take as the kind of the greatest compliment. And there are 10 families that live there, and their friends and family members roll through there and get to see these remarkable details. And, you know, again, hopefully it lasts more than 39 years, but this is just the next chapter. John, in addition to doing every residential project I've been involved with, does a lot of other stuff. In Concord, probably the thing you know him best for is he did the Endicott furniture facade work, which is remarkable. I mean, just walk by it sometime, and my point about high quality, low quality, that's high quality. But John really is, if you're a Manchester person, I mean, John's done some remarkable stuff down there, including the Pandora Mill, now UNH Manchester. And John designed the Foundry restaurant there, and this incredible space for DECA and some of these biotech. What is that the DOE?
Yeah, it's an Army bio incubator space, so it's Army biofab. So the gist of this stuff was to note that most of the work that John just showed are all in mill buildings, all the old woolen mills, and they can house anything from restaurants to office buildings to clean rooms that are, you know, designing the future of bio manufacturing. People are down there inventing, you know, how to manufacture human organs. So, it's all in the shell of a building that's been there since the 1850s. So it's interesting, it's challenging, but it definitely can be done. You can use old buildings for very, very new and, you know, cutting edge things and things that we haven't even thought of yet. So they're very interesting things to reuse.
So I guess we ought to talk about First Congregational Church a little bit. Thank you for permitting the digression. So that bell tower is 1874. That little guy, sort of a smokestack, I think is 1874. This middle thing is 1874. Everything in between is 1936. So how do we get there? Well, first of all, that's First Congregational Church, right? Sort of. Relative to Concord's existence, what's the significance of that date? It's older than Concord is, right? I mean, Rumford is 1734. I mean, this is pre-Concord. That's Timothy Walker's home. And when your house is surrounded by a garrison like that, you must be in the olden days. By 1751, I should say, in congregational parlance, it's the first meeting house, right? So the first meeting house of the First Congregational Church of Concord. 1751, along comes the second meeting house of the First Congregational Church, Church of Concord, called the Old North Church, right? Where, right over here, on the Binney Media site, where the Constitution was ratified, among other things. That one did not burn down. That became, actually, I thank Ken for his notes, the
Bible Institute for 20 years, but it did end up burning down eventually. But many years later.
the Bible Institute of, essentially the precursor to BU, Boston University, started there. That is the third meeting house of the First Congregational Church of Concord, and the first one on the current campus, sort of where the parking lot is, I think. That one did burn down. During this time, the church had grown so much that it actually sent out members 3 times to seed 3 new congregational churches in the Concord area, including South Church, which, arguably was the undoing of First Church in the end.
It was a schism.
Was it?
Schism. Disagreement. Theological disagreement.
And that one did burn down in 1873. And on the site was built the fourth meeting house of the First Congregational Church of Concord. Looks sort of, let me just scan back. Picture that one in your head for half a second. And then that. Similar? Yeah. Bell tower's the same, but that's about it. Spire is gone. The cross over the top, this spire. And actually, see this transept here? It's not there anymore. Literally, the fire was so devastating that the entire building was demolished. There are some granite blocks below grade that we've exposed in demolition, but that's it. Every single brick, everything in the middle is 1936.
Was the fire up there?
So there you go. Along comes the fire, November 3rd, 1935. And I mean, look at that gorgeous spire. And it's done.
Do you know what the cause was? I mean, was it like arson as with St. Paul's Church or?
I don't know.
Okay.
I was going to ask you guys. But lickety split, the cornerstone's laid in 1936, and by June 1937, a year and a half later, it's done. The spires are gone. I mean, it's a much more pedestrian sort of building. Less ornate. Lovely, but different. And I don't know, it was designed by an architect, Arland Durham, who was, wet behind the ears right out of Harvard, and one of his first assignments, I think. And, these things are all fakes, basically, right? I mean, it's a steel construction building, essentially. There are steel columns that coming up through here. This is just, decorative plaster. This whole truss work is all false work. There is a steel sort of scissor truss structure up in the upper portions of these hollow boxes, but there is nothing below this level. It's purely designed to look like, the Globe Theater or something you would have seen 500 years ago. But the pages keep turning. In 1967, they go back to the same architect, and he designs this for them, this Christian education wing. This is something that we found, which is actually a plan. There was to be this gorgeous amphitheater in the north lawn with a stage and this sloping lawn, sort of like a Great Woods concept of, but, something happened. Not enough money, change of plans, whatever, but it was contemplated. And that is, do you call that the 6th meeting house of the? So First Congregational Church now shares Wesley United Methodist Church, right? And, such are the times and the lack of, yeah.
And that was at Arlen Durham. design.
And, yeah, the elegance of the same architect by coincidence designed that building. So back to the building itself. So there's an interesting middle chapter. So the first Congregational church starts the cold weather shelter in 2005 and runs it for, a dozen years at least, before they notify the community that really they can't do it anymore, and the Concord Coalition to End Homelessness sort of gets its arm twisted to step up and does a wonderful job, builds this other, in the interim, it's at St. Peter's, then there's a shelter that's constructed behind the Resource Center on North Main Street, and along comes, well, let me back up half a sec. Maybe 5 years before this, the sort of writing was on the wall, I would say, for First Church. They had reached out to me, actually, and just said, we're at the beginning of this sort of thought process that with the, 60 of us left, it's not that far off before we're going to need and want a smaller building. And they said, well, we're not there yet, but what do you think? And I looked at it, and we just sort of put the idea on the shelf. Along comes the pandemic, a very compact shelter is not what you would want for a cold weather shelter. And everything sort of aligns. The Concord Coalition to End Homelessness gets federal pandemic money, is able to buy the church from First Church. First Church stays on and leases the sanctuary back for a couple of years, and they are able, the coalition is able to run a dispersed and safe homeless shelter during the pandemic. So it has this nice chapter, in my view. The Coalition to Homelessness is a very well-run, very capable organization with great leadership and board, and they understood from day one that, when this pandemic ends, this thing is a money pit. We can't, this is not a long-term plan. It's a short-term plan. They had reached out to affordable housing developers to try to, their first wish would have been housing, but affordable, and that just, they couldn't put that together. I mean, they went as far down that road as they could. Looped me back in, said, would someone like me be dumb enough to, look at something like this? I said, of course I would. And the deal slowly came together. That the proceeds, it was grant proceeds to buy it. So the sale proceeds actually benefit the coalition's mission, which is a nice other piece. So moving forward, one of the blessings of this project is that the plans exist. At Sacred Heart, there were these stories of, we saw the plans a couple of years ago, but we can't find them. So you can measure any building and drill holes in, ceilings and figure out how they're built, but to have these plans, it was truly a godsend. And there are a total of 8 sheets. That's the whole building. It's remarkable when you look at plan sets now that they could achieve it on 8 sheets. So what do John and I do? We start doodling. And when you have the existing plans, you doodle on the old plans. And there are many iterations, right, John? That is my office, and these are, I put this up on the wall. These are all the site plans, the evolution of the site plans for the St. Peter's Rollins Court project. And it's just sort of that was done by some architect for the parish. I think Jonathan Halley did that, and it's a series of townhouses. Looks nothing like what we did. Then actually the guy, what's his name? The Pocket Neighborhood guy? Ross Chapin, the Seattle architect who sort of wrote the book on Pocket Neighborhoods that Steve Dupree brought here. He actually did a little plan for us. And John said, we can do better. And we did. So my point being, sometimes it takes a while for things to really show themselves. For example, that is our 14-unit set of plans for Sacred Heart Church, which only has 10 units. So it takes a while. Finally, and we settled on the plans that we have for First Church, and I actually just went back and looked at those those are the oldest plans I could find on the project. And John, they're remarkably similar to where we wound up. I always say there's two criteria for doing projects, for me. One,
Oh, sorry.
what?
I said beer.
Well, that compensation is one. Yeah, have to like it, and it has to make money. I don't mean in a, like, I'm a great lover of money. It's just, there's a lot of risk and time in these projects. There has to be some margin. Plus, they make these things called banks that lend you money that really don't want to lend you money if you are not making anything. So that is the first floor, the basement. We never say that word. We only say garden level. If there's a genius to this project, and we really figured it out on Sacred Heart, it's that is productive space. Like Sacred Heart, it's sort of a parish hall setup. There was a stage. I mean, there was a commercial kitchen. But if you go to the church, you think of the sanctuary as the first floor, and that's the basement. But actually, that's me standing on these little knee walls at Sacred Heart. The windows are pretty big. If the ceilings are tall enough, you raise the floors, which lowers the windows. And that's what we did. And here, similar sort of, this was taken at First Church today. We will similarly raise the floor. You can see these windows originally were about 4.5 feet tall. They're now 2 feet tall because they clearly just, they froze. They had little window wells, like these bathtub window wells that must have just, with little drains, and they must have frozen and the water leaked in, and just, they said, that's it, block them in. We are going to, as part of our site plan, create these large window wells, which will allow us to enlarge these windows, so restore them to their original opening size, and turn this into 6 units, without which there would be no project. I mean, there would be no project. I would encourage other people to think of these spaces as having value. This, for example, is, there have been 2 units at Sacred Heart that have resold since I did the project. This is on the garden level. Redfin says that unit is now worth $679,000 in the basement. So my point is simply, don't challenge yourself on every assumption. I mean, we did not look at that basement garden level at Sacred Heart as being valuable space, and we came to that conclusion. And without that, there would have been no Sacred Heart, and there would be no First Church. Then on the main level, 6 units in the church, and they have the arches and the nice windows and all that sort of stuff. The middle section, is the sort of parish hall kind of section. And then, if you're going to do a basement, you might as well also do the Sunday school wing. The original plans that one affordable housing developer had was, you should knock that down. It doesn't fit. Well, it's expensive to build new buildings. It really is. I mean, we're in Concord, New Hampshire. We're not in, Berlin, but we're not in Hanover. I mean, we're at this certain price point where you have to be nimble, and that thing exists. And I would say without those 6 units, there's no project. So anyone's going to say, oh, the church, yeah, great, fine. But you have to hunt for the nooks and crannies. The math has to work. Then you get to the upper level, and this is sort of an existing floor, and you have this sanctuary, and nobody really wants 45-foot tall ceilings, so you slice it with a floor, like we did at Sacred Heart. Now, in the case of Sacred Heart, it brings you in like immediate contact with these incredible elements. That's less so true at First Church, but it's still pretty neat. Like I can't wait to see that floor, and I mean, I bet we'll have State House views out of those windows on the upper level that we don't have now. So we do all that, and thankfully, First Church has a good hunk of land around it with this really too much parking, don't you think, Chris?
Oh, too much.
I mean, and too many trees, and it's horrible.
This is a jungle.
It's, I wish there were, And, you know, I showed you those pictures. I like sort of the juxtaposition of the old and the new. It's basically going to look like a church. We take out the stained glass windows, which, think about it, stained glass looks great from the inside. It really doesn't look very attractive from the outside, especially when it's covered with sort of, you know, browning plastic panels. So the windows really do punch it up. I mean, drive by Sacred Heart sometime. I think, and we played around with different ideas, black and you know, all these sort of contrasting colors. And in the end, we came to the conclusion at Sacred Heart, and we followed it here, which is let the building kind of do more of the talking. You know, like you know, so we essentially matched this precast color in the, you know, more modern quote storefront windows. And then this is sort of the one little playful thing is, you know, go in a modern direction. Show that there is a new chapter. We've turned the page on this thing a little bit. And I mean, I bet half the people here, if not all of you, hate the glass panels. You know, I like them. I don't know. I think the Architectural Design Review Committee was, you know, conflicted on that one. But
I don't like the planter.
you don't like they did make us put the planter in. And when you turn the page, you can do other things that you've always wanted to do, like flood the thing with solar. I mean, it's wonderful. And personally, I've wanted to do significant solar components for a while, but been distracted by other things, and you know, it's just hard. And I do think there is, it's 2024. I mean, I think there is at least a moral obligation to consider how buildings can be built nowadays to be as planet-friendly as possible. And when you have a big hunk of flat roof with zero obstruction and a big 12-pitch south-facing roof, you know, there better be a good reason why you don't do that. So what we're actually going to be able to do, I think, is have all the house service and about 6 to 8 of the units be truly net zero. Like, you know. So there's a few steps in between. We saw Chris 4 times. We went to Architectural Design Review 3 times, Planning Board twice, City Council for a 7090 twice, and a new one for me is our neighbor, as is well reported, challenged our zoning permits, really sued you more than me, right? Sued the city of Concord, saying that Chris got it all wrong. Yep. And we've been able to resolve that. And after you go through, so that takes some time, and you know, you're not sure how it turns out. And then what happens in the meantime? Well, the 5-year treasury does that. And when you borrow money for commercial projects, you don't care what the 30-year mortgage rate is, you don't care what the overnight federal funds rate is, you care about the 5-year rate. Really, you care about the 5-year Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston rate, but it's very closely tied to the 5-year treasury. And it just follows this rate. That's what it was at when we first kicked the tire. That's what it's at now. If we were pricing our loan at that, there would be no First Church project. But thankfully, Franklin Savings Bank said they wanted to do it when we talked to them right there. And their original loan commitment ended there. And they have extended it to July 1st. Without a New Hampshire community bank being willing to do that, there's no project. I mean, one of the things we are really lucky about in New Hampshire is that our community banks are healthy, have a lot of lending capacity, and they're mutuals. They truly care about, I mean, there is no stockholder to look around to who's asking them to juice the returns. They exist, you know, for our benefit. And Merrimack County is great like that. Franklin Savings Bank's been great like that. So we hang on by our fingernails and we start. We put up our construction fence. I won't ask John what he thinks about the.
I like it.
You do?
Lovely.
Do? It's a play on words, right? And pictures taken today. That's the Sunday school wing, the west wing. This is the sort of parish hall. This is, the middle section is the most bizarre thing ever. This is this enormous sort of timber compression truss with these big diagonals and compression rods. And this was a flat roof. It's now the whole thing has a pitched roof, but That was a flat roof. So these things were carrying this tremendous roof load. And then this is the altar area. We've removed the altar because it's 2024. You know, some people have mobility problems. So to go up 2 steps and then back down the other on the hallway means that certain larger sections of the building will be inaccessible. So we removed that to build a new floor without the change in elevation. So that's, hopefully there's a whole bunch more slides and a nice one with a ribbon cutting in a year. But, yes?
I assume there was an organ somewhere in there. What happened to the organ?
Yeah, there's an organ up in there. What happened?
Someone stole pipes.
Well, it's like an encyclopedia set. Don't take one. So the organ at Sacred Heart was essentially sold for $1. There was a company that came in, and it's a lot of work to, you know, take it apart, label every pipe, and, you know, I mean, basically these guys are sitting there making all these custom cabinets and labeling things and diagrams. It's a lot of work. That organ was intact. You know, as part of the departure of First Church, some of the pipes started disappearing, and, you know, once that happens, it's an encyclopedia set. I'm not sure you even intact you're going to find a buyer for $1, but when, you know, you're missing a couple of volumes. So there are a bunch of pipes left. If anyone would like one, you are welcome to them. Some of them are gorgeous. I mean,
Grab one for me, then.
well, some are, you know, the really low notes are these huge fir boxes that are just gorgeous. You know, 15 feet tall, yeah.
I just want to comment that I have really enjoyed watching how you have made the older buildings around Concord so usable and taxpayer to the city and so forth. I really, really appreciate. And I also appreciate that in your comments tonight, you were very realistic about the costs that the developer is taking in terms of the risk, in terms of what interest rates will do, in terms of what construction costs and materials will cost, because I hear so often, for example, in the case of the building next to the co-op, well, we really should, and what I hear from you is, I will, when these things come together. And I just think that's so important for people to remember that preservation and adaptive reuse are not a given if the numbers don't work. And that can be really, really challenging. And I appreciate the effort you put in.
Thank you.
Did I hear you say a few moments ago that there would be additional slides either this evening or futuristically?
I think futuristically, hopefully of this, you know, seamless, smooth, completely on schedule construction with a, you know.
And the second part of the question would be, do you have any slides to display the number of units and a typical 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom unit plan view? Do you have any of that?
I don't think anything will zoom in well enough. I mean, basically there are 30 units.
Yeah, but you've got to know already, you've been through this enough to do a blow-up of a 1-bedroom typical, 2-bedroom typical. You don't have anything to show us.
So sure, I mean, I will show you a 1-bedroom typical. So here's the garden level. This is a 1-bedroom unit right here.
Garden level is ground floor?
Basement.
Basement,
Yeah.
okay.
Can't say that. So it's about 500 I think it's about 545 square feet. You walk in a door, you have about an 11-foot run of kitchen with a fridge that has walls on either side so you don't see it from this sort of dining living space. You have a bath close to the hallway. We try to stack all the plumbing close to the corridors. In you come, and you have a bedroom, 120 square foot bedroom with a 5 feet of closet. That's a pretty typical unit. And
You said 120 square foot bedroom?
About 120 square, 10 by 12.
10 by 12. Ooh,
My,
okay.
my view is, so what do you want in your bedroom? Queen bed, 2 nightstands, a dresser, a way to enter, and a closet. That can be achieved, I mean, you can do it in 200, 300 square feet. It can be done really in 120 feet, as long as the door's in the right place. I'm a big believer in, I always say to John, we have to, they're small units. You're not going to have sort of zillions of furnishing patterns, but there has to be a place where you can put a dining room table, here. There has to be a place, I don't think you should have a TV in the living room, but I understand a lot of people think otherwise. There has to be a couch location and a TV opposite. That's what people want. So you have to, as long as those things work, and there are certain distances that make sense. Below which, not good. Above which, yeah, would you like to have an extra 50 square feet in the bedroom for a chase lounge or your treadmill or whatever? Fine, but you also have to pay me for it. I have to pay to build it, So the theory of this is the units are on the smaller side, but you can fit all those, it's not, you have to sort of climb over your partner into the bed. There's certain minimums. There also are a number of lounges throughout the space. The building just sort of presents itself that way. The choir loft is a lounge. So let me point out, so here's a lounge on the garden level.
You mean like a common area?
Yeah. Sort of, you're on a Zoom call or something and your partner's there, or you just want sort of a change of pace and you're working at home, or you want to hang out with some friends. There you go. This whole front, that patio that I showed you, I think is really one of the kind of gems of it, as well as the whole lawn. And there are some lower patios. This is a patio and entrance on Washington Street. There's sort of a lounge in here. So lounge, outdoor patio, lounge, and then upstairs, these mini lounges in the choir loft area, a lounge up here. So there's a lot of little places that people can,
Does the square footage increase as you go up a floor?
No, it decreases because, sorry. See the outside wall there? It steps in at this column line.
Yeah.
So the footprint of the church is about 5,000 square feet, but it's 3,000 by the time you do that. It creates some interesting geometry.
So is there any storage area for people? Where are they gonna put like their Christmas decorations?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that question. This is a basement area now, and these are like 6 by 6. Is that right?
Yeah,
No, or maybe even bigger. Storage area. So everyone has, a storage area for their bikes and whatnot, and there'll be some large areas that will designate for, kayaks and longer things like that. So people have their vacuum cleaner closets and all that kind of stuff in their units, but they also get this other space for, a few bigger things.
Has the chapel been destroyed already?
Largely, yes. Although, I saved so much stuff from Sacred Heart and moved it. I literally was the owner of 20 pews at one time. And then you realize this is just absurd. And I would offer them to people and, I was down to 18. And I have 2 stained glass windows left from Sacred Heart, and that's it. I have, I saved these stained glass windows. I mean, I agonized. I took all the altar paneling myself off of Sacred Heart. I mean, I ended up getting like a little fragment of a nail in my eye. Had to go to the emergency room. I mean, I saved it all, moved it 3 or 4 times. And so I just, long story short is the way that demo contracts work is you declare what you're taking and you have to take it. And then they have all this, they have the salvage rights. So the demo contract on this is literally $235,000 to take everything out and dispose of it, including probably $20,000 of asbestos. They own the salvage rights, so all the metals get salvaged. This company, I mean, these guys they're smart. All the masonry, there's some masonry walls, they crush it and sell it for fill. They bring in, there were 4 or 5 architectural salvage firms that were there sort of on day one, and they walked them around and, they cut their different deals. So a lot of this stuff will see another iteration somewhere. I just don't know where. Sorry, Jim?
Is that the second floor? Or the second floor is cut across halfway?
What, the new second floor?
Is that the upstairs?
This is where the pews were. So this is this is the sanctuary.
Yeah.
The new floor that we add will basically, I think it sits just underneath these corbels. It essentially aligns with the choir loft. It's 4 inches higher than the choir loft, so we need a ramp, right? Can't do a 4-inch step.
We'll have a higher ceiling.
No, the ceiling then, they will have their floor will be here, their ceiling will be essentially where the roof starts, and they'll still have 9.5-foot ceilings. We had an earlier iteration of a plan that had some attic units with these dormers and skylights punched out, and we only have the zoning permission to do 30 units. So I'm glad it went there. In the end, thank goodness.
Is this going to be rental property?
Yes. 2 reasons. One, I think it'll be a lovely property, and I hope that the neighborhood generally is sort of a step or 2 higher. I mean, I think that tends to be what happens when you get significant investments, but I'm not sure I'm pretty sure it's not quite there yet for kind of a buyer pool.
Have you anticipated the tenant group that will be living there?
So I should have, actually, that's one of the things thank you for reminding me. One of the things I meant to say at the very beginning is one person who's not here that I owe a ton of thanks to is my business partner, Ben Kelly, who was not able to join us tonight, but he is very capable and very experienced in the ownership and operation of apartment buildings. He owns stuff throughout the state. He'd be a better one to answer that question. I mean, I think as a practical matter, it'll be a mix of folks. The rates are they are expensive on a per square foot basis. But the units are smaller. So, let's just say that the average rent in Concord is $3 per square foot per month. 500 square feet is $1,500. 800 square feet is $2,400. If it was the same price, would you want the 800? Sure you would, but it's not the same price. So I think part of what our business model is, be on the smaller side, but don't trip over the line and be too small. Have some spaces some of these shared spaces that makes the units feel bigger than they are. But since the units are only 550 square feet, they're actually at, much significantly lower rents than you would see in other, what I'd call sort of high-end buildings. Like if you look at what the Flatley rents are gonna be, you're gonna say, oh my gosh. They're gorgeous, they're bigger.
Because these are rentals, I assume there won't be a monthly maintenance fee, HOA fee.
Right, and there won't be. And really, I hate getting nickel and dimed. I hate paying baggage fees on the airlines and all this other nonsense. So we've kind of decided, it's sort of all, people will have their own electric bill because they'll have their own heat pump system. But other than that, sort of everything's included. You don't get charged for parking or storage or Wi-Fi or any of these other things. Or, yeah. So you pay rent, you get a utility bill. Actually, unless you're in one of the units that is one of the net zero units, that, in which case the rent would probably be slightly higher, and then the way that the kind of group net metering works is we'd get the bill and it kind of gets credited against this solar array production.
Quick question on the side that you have garden sign. Are you gonna have to dig down to make the doors? Because I'm thinking the way it is now, you have to go down the stairs to get in.
You don't enter from the outside.
Oh.
So, you come down this new main stair, which is where the chapel is now. That's sort of the primary stair, or the bell tower stair. So you're not entering directly from the outside. We excavate down a big window well like this. That's, out 8 feet from the building, and really we only have to go down about 3 feet to open up that space and leave, 8 inches for snow and rain and whatnot, and just make doggone sure we have good drains in here, and that it also, as sort of a belt and suspenders, it does daylight out, so in the event that those drains failed or froze or whatever, water has a way out, we're not flooding the entire.
Have you projected when your finished date will be and tenants will be moving in?
I would say it's a year from today. To me, there's no reason. Look, that thing burned down on November 3rd, 1935, and a year and a half. It's not like they started building the next day. It was back and running 18 months later. I sort of had this feeling, no construction project should take more than a year. It shouldn't. Why? It's not always true, but once you start, they keep sending you these bills in the mail every month. You get taxes and insurance and mortgage. You're paying debt service on your loan. So why would you want to get it done as quickly as possible?
Depends on where your supply comes from. Whether it's delayed on the ocean.
Yeah, and there are some very interesting things that are happening. Construction, other than the whole interest rate thing, that's a whole animal that's been affecting things, but also everything you hear, construction costs and supply chains and whatnot. A lot of that has settled down. There are still a few things that are really weird, like transformers for a project, like switchgear for 1200 amp and 1000 amp services. I think John's working on a project in Nashua where, it's done except
It'll be done, but
there's one switch.
We'll have electrical connections.
So, some
It's
strange.
everywhere.
Are there any two-bedroom units?
There are 12 two-bedroom units, yes.
Out of 30?
Out of 30, and I want to say 6 of the 2 bedrooms are sort of 2-bedroom, 2-bath, sort of a master suite, if you will, and then the second full bath doubles as the powder room, and then 6 are 2-bedroom, 1-bath.
How are you arranging for the parking?
Where did I go? Sorry. That's actually not the final plan. It's just that's the colored version. So I sent you that. But there's another parking lot here. We have 42 parking spaces for 30 units, and for 40 bedrooms. So we basically assign one permit per bedroom. You would get a one-bedroom apartment, here you get a parking permit. Not a space, a permit. And I will tell you as the owner of, ask the city of Concord how it works when you basically build a 500 space garage and lease out 500 parking spaces, individual spaces. You go in, you know, you've leased every space, yet you walk in at 2 in the afternoon and it's half empty. You know, you can oversubscribe these things, and we will, you know, modestly.
Let's take just 2 more questions, give them a break.
Yes?
So in the non-net zero units, the heat is electric?
It's a heat pump.
Does a heat pump use fuel oil?
Nope, I mean, you know the term mini split?
Oh, okay.
You know, it's essentially, you are extracting heat from the out, you know, it's essentially like a reversible, I guess without getting too far into the mechanical engineering side, you know, if you ever put your hand on top of your air conditioning condenser in the summertime, you know, it's super hot. It's exhausting heat from the outside. A heat pump is really just reversing it. You are extracting heat from the outside. And you say, well, how, and exhausting it. It's like you're refrigerating the outside. You say, well, how can that work when it's 0? Well, it's not 0. It's 270 degrees Kelvin. Like, if you're at 0 Kelvin, then everything starts jiggling. But, you know, it's 270 degrees. So there's a ton of heat in the air, even when it's cold to us.
The reason I asked is then what do you do about the fuel tanks that are underground?
Hope they didn't leak, pump them out, and remove them.
You know where they are?
Yeah, they're right out.
My dad actually put those, the one on Washington Street side.
Yeah.
He was one of the people that helped put it in, so I was just wondering.
Hope he did a good job, because yeah.
Did you want the tank?
I see 2 questions, there's one here.
Okay.
So you have to take it out then?
That's typically, yes. You know, I think a lot of times maybe prior to that, they would fill with sand and make sure, but I think it's just better to get rid of them.
And I guess we have a couple more questions, but I should have said before, like, John is a bright and opinionated person, as, and I'm sure disagrees with me on a bunch of things, and we should give him an opportunity to.
No, I think it's all good.
It's all good.
It's all working. And like the heat pump thing, it's all refrigerator. It's like your refrigerator. Like, you know, I'm not smart enough to understand the physics of it, but it condenses the refrigerant and sends it all around. And one unit could be calling for heat, the other unit could be calling for cooling, and it's just this big loop of refrigerant that balances it all out. And they've come a long way. Back, you know, I remember my dad had a barbershop in the 70s, and he had a heat pump, and they called it a chill chaser. And you never would see them unless you were in Florida. But he had one in Worcester, Mass, and it didn't work because it got cold out. But now they're going below 0, and they're heating your house. Our residence is nothing but heat pumps up in Pennacook, and we never have any problems. It's just pretty slick, and more, you know, it's not using fossil fuels, although, you know, electricity is still being made with some fossil fuel, but it's kind of the future of where things are heading. We're doing a 45-unit building in Nashua. It's all heat pumps, all electric.
So each one of the units is going to have its own heat pump?
In this particular project, it is individual to the unit. In many,
They're going to be on the outside of the building?
Yeah, there's an outdoor unit which includes the compressor, and it's, you know, it's
Where's that?
3 feet wide, 3 feet tall, a foot deep, and they just sort of mount on brackets, and they have these fans that run. You sort of gang them together, put them relatively low to the ground, and then typically when you think of mini splits, there'll be if you walk in someone, there's a unit on the wall that's about, 3 or 4 feet long and projects out about 8 inches and is a foot tall. I think they're the ugliest thing in the world. I mean, just horrible. So here what we actually do is we don't use those. We, for a variety of reasons, I mean, this is one of the most challenging if we were in Brockton, Mass, or something, Quincy, you know, we'd be talking about heat pumps with no backup source. You know, heat pumps work, their efficiency starts to degrade, even the so-called hyperheat ones, at 0, and they're designed to, depending on the model, shut off at -18 or -20, and they will not restart until you get back up to -14. So it does occasionally get there. If your sole heat source croaks, that's, you know, that's a bloodbath. I mean, you know. So what we did here is we decided to, A, because I can't stand the look of the indoor units, and B, we wanted a backup source, is the quote indoor unit, so there's an outdoor unit and there's a refrigerant line, a line set, and then an indoor unit. Usually you see them on the wall. Here we have these so-called concealed ducted units. They're these little like suitcase-sized things that have a fan in them, and small ductwork runs. Perfect for something like this. So you don't see them, which is nice. You have better, you can distribute, you know, the wall unit, there'd be one there, which means it's colder there than it is there. The, you know, ducted system allows you better distribution, and you can put an electric resistance inline duct heater in the ductwork. So the thing, you know, the thermostat has enough of a brain to recognize that it's not, something's happening where it's not satisfying by the heat pump running, so the electric resistance will come on and provide the heat. Now you wouldn't want to do that because you'd use like 4 times as much energy to produce heat through electric resistance than heat pump. But
how many people do you think here understand what you're talking about?
but I mean, it's even if you don't, to understand that, like, these are the many little, so many of these little, and this building, I would say, this is not one building. It really is. It's a church, which has one whole set of issues. It's this 1967 cinder block school, which has, and then this, you know, hodgepodge of whatever in the middle, and they each have their own, like literally whenever I walk a contractor through, like, you have to accept that it's 3 buildings.
What
And we're going
hearing
one
is we've
by
got
one.
somebody here who cares, and that's what I'm hearing.
If it was boring, why do it, huh?
Yeah, no.
I think that's a Steve
really, I
Dubry
think
quote.
you're giving a lot of people some confidence in what's gonna happen there. You had one, did you have a question?
I had a quick question. Now that you're gonna have this done really soon,
Really
if
soon.
you drive around Concord, is there a building you're like, if that ever comes up, that's something?
I think we're on TV, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I would say, yes. There's a building that I will own someday. One of the other owners in the building, if he's watching, someday, or you can buy me out, I don't care.
No names there.
Yeah, I'd say, you know, it's a strange line of work to be in because I have to wait for something to become, like, you know, if you offer me a piece like land, I don't want to build a Friendlies. Well, actually, there aren't Friendlies. I don't want to build a CVS. Like, just boring. No, thanks. Like, just, I'd rather
But there is something you
torture
drive
myself.
by, you're
Like,
like,
yeah,
You know, okay.
what would I say? I would say, I hope that some of the people that own some of the upper floors of downtown buildings either sell them or do them themselves. I don't really care which one. To me, that's, and hopefully, you know, everything's incremental. I mean, I think Mark's done some remarkable things. And that project that I pointed out, I think is great for the downtown. You know, he and some others own some remarkable spaces, and it's really challenging. And he's got his plate full with Phoenix Hall, but you know, hopefully the Flatley thing, you know, the employment security comes online. All these things sort of prove a model. We're all sort of guinea pigs in some respects. I hope everybody succeeds because that makes it easier for the next guy to do things.
What do you say? Will you stick around, will you guys stick around for a minute in case somebody has? Next month, you may be wondering, next month, we've got a program that we're sharing with the New Hampshire Historical Society. same second Thursday, 7 o'clock, but it's going to be about the Swenson Granite Company. And it's,
It's
I was gonna
at the
say
New
God,
Hampshire
yeah.
Historical Society. They are hosting the location in their theater space that they have, so we'll be at the Tuck Building, the Tuck Library, on Park Street.
Yeah, and please come. I think you, by the way, that'll give you a chance to see the inside of their building, at least in a, and it's a really beautiful building. So I encourage you to come.
We have a couple of other things, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Well, we'll be down at Market Days, so please come and say hello. On June 29th, we're partnering with the Black History Trail to do the historic reading of Frederick Douglass's speech, what the 4th of July means to the slave. So we will be on City Plaza, starting at noon. We have a number of guest speakers. The speech takes about an hour to read. This is something the Black History Trail does and partners with organizations all across the state. It's important to Concord for this purpose. Jonathan Hale, the statue that we have on the State House Plaza, or the State Plaza, Jonathan Hale was one of our founding fathers that fought against slavery in New Hampshire and helped to get it abolished. Franklin Douglass spoke at the honoring of that statue for Jonathan Hale, and parts of this speech were used in that dedication. So Concord's role in this speech is a little bit more elevated. We're very proud that they selected us to partner with us for the reading of this speech. So that is going to be June 29th at noon, City Plaza. You can go to the farmer's market first, and then you can come join us for the speech. We have some really great people, and it's an honor that we're doing that. Then you'll want to be paying attention. We're doing a partnering with the Heritage Commission for the City of Concord. Much like the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance does their Magnificent 12, or the 12 to Save, 7 to Save, something like that.
7.
We're going to do our first ever honoring of historic projects and historic preservation projects in the city of Concord. Think long and hard about what you would want to give an award to. Since we're starting at a place where there's never been done, you pick whatever you want to go, this person deserves, or this project deserves an award, this person deserves it because of all the things that they've done for historic preservation, whatever it might be. There are different categories that we'll be putting out that people can vote for. What is important here? Involve the children. It is not this generation that knows to preserve. We need to teach the next generation the value of adaptive reuse, the value of preserving the things that are important in our community. And it can be, this neighborhood looks fantastic. We should save this neighborhood. This is the area that we are here on North Main Street is the only historic neighborhood that we actually have identified in the city of Concord. We have Pennacook Village, we have downtown, we have this neighborhood. Is there another neighborhood that should be recognized? So think large, think big, include the kids, because they really are the ones that need to carry the torch forward. How about you?
Really well. How about that, John?
Yeah.
Are there some of the Swensons going to be involved with
Kurt
this?
Swenson is actually doing the presentation for us, so he's going to talk about the years that it really was Swenson Granite.
Yeah.
He's not going to cover too much of the early core years. Boy, that was hard. You tried it.
When there were 150 quarries.
That's correct. And of course, they all consolidated into the one. So I think he's going to talk about the time that it is Swenson Granites, going up to where he sold it to, or the family sold it to Holly Core.
Yeah.
Holly Core, I think, is the current owners.
How's that? Pretty good? See you next month.